Hi, everyone. Last night I was working on this presentation and making some notes, and my son Anderson came up and he said, "Oh, Dad, what are you doing? What's going on?" And I said, "I'm working on this speech. I'm going to be having a conversation about standing out when you're in an interview, applying for a school." And he said, "Okay, well, you helped me with my public speaking, so why don't you tell me how you're going to start?" I said, "Okay, well, hi, my name's Christopher Mercer, and I'm here to talk." He said, "Stop, come on. You have me doing all these theatrics when I present, and you have me saying, 'Close your eyes, everyone, imagine your greatest dreams.' You have me quoting Theodore Roosevelt. Come on. And that's how you're going to start?" And so I said to him, "But, you know, the most important thing I want to talk about today is not about the kind of the start of standing out, but the substance of standing out. I want to talk about what it really means to stand out, not for the first 5 seconds or first 2 minutes of an interview, but throughout the entire interview process, throughout the entire application process as you're writing and applying for the school of your dreams." So I said, "So cut me some slack. I'm actually going to try to be very serious at the start about this presentation and talk about what I have learned through applying to schools, through attending schools, and through interviewing candidates over the last number of years." So I'm going to do that over the next few minutes. Why am I up here today to talk? And why do I feel like I have something to say? I think it's because of 3 reasons. First of all, I applied for universities out of high school in the US, applied to 6 schools, and received a number of scholarships for both tennis and academics. Now, I wish that I had received more money for the tennis part. I was thinking of what you were saying earlier. I felt like there was almost out of pride. I wish that they had more money towards the tennis, but my passion for tennis doesn't actually match, my ability does not match my passion. And so they actually said, "You know what, we'll give it to you for the athletics or the academics, but the athletics, not so much." The second reason is I applied to business school in the US and attended business school at the Harvard Business School, and so had a chance to go through that process all over again after undergrad. And that was an interesting process where I learned a lot about myself in doing that. And then the third reason is because over the last 10 years, I've been an interviewer for the Harvard Business School and also for the Harvard undergrad program. And so I've had a chance to meet a number of students. And over the years, there's certain students that stand out. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about some of the things that I remember about all of those different experiences. And so as I distill it down to what do I want to talk about, it's really 3 key things. The first is, I think it's really important at any age, and you can do this at any age in life, even all of you, I think it's really important to know yourself and your story. I think it's worth taking time, no matter what age, to know yourself and know your story. The second is to get excited about it and to be passionate about that story that you're going to tell. And the third is to tell it in a really authentic voice. It's really, it's so obvious when someone has been overly coached, be it through an academic process or through an interview process, and I'll talk a bit more about that. So let me start with this idea of knowing yourself. I don't think people spend enough time really asking themselves why. And so a tool that after graduating from undergrad, I did some management consulting. And so there's a very basic tool that I recommend for all students to look through and to practice. It's called the 5 Whys. Simple tool. And all it is asking the question around anything that you want to do or anything that you're passionate about or anything you seem to like or a point of view, is just ask the question why 5 times. So I encourage everyone to ask themselves the question why. So, you know, when I think about things that I'm really passionate about, I really wanted to attend a general management program for business school. And so I asked myself, why did you want to do that? Well, I like all aspects of business. Why? Well, I like seeing the whole process from revenue right down to what they call the EBITDA line, or the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. I really like that. I like understanding the balance sheet. Okay, well, why do you like doing that stuff? Well, I like it because it helps me feel like I'm connected to all parts of the business, and I feel like I have a lot of curiosity about things, and I'm able to satisfy that. Okay, why are you so curious? I don't know. I don't have another why for that. But what that hopefully helps me do is understand more about myself. And I don't think there's enough of that, especially among teenagers applying to universities, asking themselves the 5 whys. And they can go deeper, they can go only to 3 questions, but the point is, know yourself. Once you understand more about yourself, I think it's really important to then focus in on your passions. I remember an interview that I conducted with a student that was applying to Harvard College a number of years ago, and he was a top athlete in golf. And this kid, he loved golf. And he knew the history of golf. His extracurricular activities, of course, were in golf. His charitable work was in golf. He took that passion and he made it so well-rounded that as an interviewer, I could understand why he did what he did, and I could tell by the stories he told how passionate he was. An example was, I'm not a big golfer, just show of hands, who plays golf here in the room? Okay, good. So you probably all know this, but I guess according to this student, he was talking about how depending on the time of day and the type of grass, the green actually plays differently. And he talked about Kentucky bluegrass and just different types of grass, and how in the morning, depending on where the sun is, the grass will move. And he was describing how, as a result of the way that it moved, he would change the angle of his putt. And then, because I'm curious, as I mentioned with my 5 whys, I was asking more and more questions about this, and we got into this really passionate conversation. And I could imagine, I didn't see his application essays, but I could imagine him putting that same passion and vigor into that subject, and it would come through in spades in writing as well. Whereas if he were to describe something that he thought someone wanted to hear about, I don't think it would have gone over as well. And so to me, it always stood out as it's really important to be passionate. The third thing, so after we know about ourselves and we are passionate about it and we know what we want to talk about, I think the most important next step is to tell the story authentically. And this is where I remember vividly a question on the interview process, which was to talk about a defining moment in your life. And I remember, and I think I've heard some advice today about, it's never too early to start thinking about the school you want to attend and thinking about colleges. Absolutely agree, and it's never too early to start thinking about those types of questions. I remember receiving the information package and looking at it for a long time, thinking, first question was, like, what's a defining moment mean to me? And maybe others have definitions of defining moments. So I remember putting it away and then looking it up and putting it away, thinking of it about 10 different times, 10 different angles before I sat down and I put pen to paper and I wrote about a defining moment in my life. And it was when I was 12 years old and I was asked to help take care of my grandmother who had Alzheimer's. And while that probably doesn't make a lot of sense as a parenting move today, back then my parents were looking for some support, and I certainly stepped up and helped. And I remember how it changed my approach to things, and I wrote about that. And I wrote about it, and I had friends and family look at it. And then they edited it and helped me with it, and then I rewrote it, and I wrote it again. And through the process of telling the story authentically and taking the time to tell the story, I think it helped me a lot in achieving what I wanted to do, which was getting accepted into the business school. I also think that there are lots of examples in the business world and popular culture as to all of these things that I've talked about today. If you take something like as simple as Amazon and Jeff Bezos and how he approaches meetings, you can just look on LinkedIn and there's lots of examples of how he no longer is PowerPoint the way that he wants people to go and present at Amazon. What he wants is them to write a memo. And he said the best memos are written over a course of a number of days. And so the first draft isn't acceptable. It tends not to be the best quality. And so he encourages people to write it and then sleep on it and write it again and sleep on it and get comments and get feedback. And so when we think about telling our story authentically, it's really important to take the time and use our own voice and get help at the same time when we write it. Now, just as I conclude on all of this, I would say that there's, on a lighter note, it doesn't have to always be so serious when you're telling your story, and it doesn't have to be so honest. And so I'll leave you on this thought. It's just an idea to think about. I often will say, and don't quote me on this, but never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Now, what I mean by that, and I want to explain. That's not a good way to end a speech, and that's the quote Christopher Mercer said. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. What I mean by that is this. I've interviewed a number of students that feel it's really important to share every single detail of a story. And so we could be there for a very long time, and it looks like they've really asked themselves the 5 whys, and then they take me through a winding path as they're telling the story. So what I encourage is, in the process of learning to tell your story authentically, learn to tell it in an efficient manner as well. And so, when you write something and you edit it, it's really important to be comfortable, and I tell this to students, be comfortable getting rid of information that's not all that relevant. Focus on what the outcomes were. Focus on how you felt. Balance it with a mix of your heart and your mind, because that's what people want to hear about. They don't want to hear just about one or the other. They want to hear a balance, and they want you to tell your story authentically. And so in my experience, both applying to undergrad, applying to my master's, interviewing students, as well as just actually interviewing hundreds of people in the business world, I think those that know themselves well, get excited about what they have to say, and then tell it in a really authentic yet efficient manner, it tends to win the day. So thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to meeting you a little later.